Go. All right, let's do this. Yeah, it might take a while because it's 100 games, so we gotta basically go over all over them. So yeah, just for context, this is I started basically 1cc in the games, 1cc in arcade and console games about 4 years ago now, 5 years ago. And so far I 1cc 250 games, unique games, and out of the 250, I've done about 100 brawlers. So when we talk about brawlers, basically we talk about beat 'em ups, hack and slash, 2D side scrollers. Like, I'm not including only belt scrollers. I'm including like the bigger definition of brawlers. And yeah, this is basically the list, and I put in just a simple rating from S to D. Go over basically what I like about them, what's important, and why I'm putting that rating. Okay, let me put this full screen. Yeah. Okay, so it looks like we have the view of everything. So yeah, we gotta start from, I don't know, just randomly maybe. So this is the list of all 100 brawlers that I've done over the past since 2020. The thing is, like, my first 1cc was Streets of Rage 4. It was a deathless run actually on V4 for Streets of Rage 4. So maybe we can start actually with Street of Rage 4, since it was the first brawler I 1cc'd, like, seriously, and sort of taking the time to learn it and learn the strats. It was the V4. It was like the hardest version. But yeah, Street of Rage 4 is a great game. You know, it was the one that basically made me start working on 1cc's and sort of put me in that mood of going back into retro gaming. It was right after COVID. It was right at the peak of COVID, when COVID started, and we were put in our basically homes and I had to like play a lot of retro stuff. And yeah, Street of Rage 4 was the one that I started, and I think easily it's like, if I have to put it, obviously I have to put it as an S tier, because it's kind of like the game that brought... It's an easy S tier. Because it brought back the beat 'em up genre. Beat 'em ups were coming back like in the mid 2010s, but I think Street of Rage 4 brought back the renaissance of beat 'em ups. So that's why I'm putting it S tier. It caters to a lot of people. It caters to the modern gamers. It caters to the old school gamers. It has amazing mechanics, amazing, like, I don't know, 26 characters. So you'll find your character regardless. And yeah, it's hard not to put it in that category. Hey, Lord Kiester, welcome, man, welcome. Yeah, we're doing a little bit of a tier list. So we're starting with the... I'm gonna pick the games randomly here. But I wanted to rank Streets of Rage 4 first, because it's kind of like the first game that I did and started like my 1cc journey. Okay, next we're gonna talk about maybe Alien vs Predator, since it's on this list. Yeah, Alien vs Predator is kind of like the game that gets respected by everyone. But not a lot of people honestly have put Alien vs Predator and tried to 1cc it like seriously. A lot of people played it casually, but I feel like the people who talk about it and say it's one of the best beat 'em up of all time didn't really put in the time to like learn it. It's kind of one of those games that gets talked about, but when you dig into the mechanics, in terms of yeah, it has two things. In terms of mechanics, I would say it's one of the best probably beat 'em ups that Capcom put together, because it has an amazing combo system. The engine is amazing. The character differences are very good. The biggest problem, anyway, for me with Alien vs Predator is the difficulty balance and the pacing. The game starts very, very well, you know, with short stages, very, very targeted. You don't feel like it's very long, but then the final stage, I think for me, ruins it a little bit, because it's although the game is amazing, but to me anyway, this is a tier list that is based on my opinion. not based on how the game it is, but I would say in terms of mechanics, I would put it as an S tier. But in terms of difficulty and pacing, it's a not. I will knock it down. So to me, it's not an S tier. It might be an unpopular opinion, but I'll put it as an A tier. It's definitely a good game, but what knocks it down is the fact that the final stage is a drag. Exactly. Exactly. I agree with you, Johan. And also the fact that it becomes more of a shoot 'em up rather than a beat 'em up. Like you rely, like if you're going for 1cc, I would say you kind of like tend to overuse the, if you're just going for like safe strats and stuff, you tend to overuse the shooting more, so it loses the brawler aspect of it. And also the final boss is a bit of a bullshit as well. But yeah, overall I would say like if people put it as an S tier, it's definitely an amazing game. Alright, let's pick another different one here. So in terms of other Capcom beat 'em ups, there is also obviously one of my favorites beat 'em ups of all times. It's not a perfect beat 'em up, but to me this is an easy S tier, and I put it even over Streets of Rage 4. A reason why, like, there's a couple of things. Two things. I mean, the first thing is that there's a lot of nostalgia for me for this game. I played it as a kid, so it was kind of like a game that I played as a kid, so I have a lot of memories with it. Also, it's a game that perfected the formula of Final Fight. So Final Fight started, you know, the I would say the blueprint of how beat 'em ups should play, and like good beat 'em ups should play. And technically, Cadillacs and Dinosaurs is kind of like that perfect formula where you have a lot of mobility, and you kind of make your enemies, like, if you know how to play it, especially with the top tier characters, like you kind of very much in control of your enemies. The crowd control. It has some issues. I would say mostly the length is a bit of a tricky one. The bosses are also a little bit tricky. Stage 4 boss, the double slice sword fight, the final stage boss is not that interesting. So I have to like say what are the flaws for it, for me anyway, are mostly the double slice sword fight, and also the fact that you have two characters that are way overpowered compared to the other character. To me, like, all characters are good. Mustafa, Hannah, Mess, and Jack, all of them are great, but you have Mustafa and Mess in one tier, and then basically Hannah and Jack, like, they're like not as good. But yeah, overall, great beat 'em up, easy to pick up, and yeah, this is definitely a top tier for me. Let's talk about a little bit of Konami beat 'em ups maybe, and start with the most popular one, TMNT 1989. So TMNT is kind of like a game that gets talked about a lot because everyone played TMNT in their arcades, especially if you were in the arcade days. It was in every arcade. It was good distribution, and in terms of presentation, amazing presentation. Very good, like in terms of co-op. It had 4-player co-op. It put all the, like, everything. It was a very good fan service to everyone, because the presentation is amazing. The gameplay is super simple, 2 buttons. But obviously, in terms of if you want to learn it for 1cc purposes, it becomes very limited because it's a very simple gameplay, not a lot of and yeah, obviously, if you put yourself in that context of 89, the beat 'em up genre was flourishing, but there wasn't no very highly developed mechanics. Like, Final Fight came up with sort of mechanics that put the genre in another level. So in terms of simple gameplay, yeah, TMNT is relatively simple. In terms of difficulty, I would say it's the biggest issue of this game is that you have to play against the bosses in a very specific way. So the hit stun doesn't matter for them. You have one move basically that you need to spam in order to 1cc, you know, the A and B together, or the special power. That's the only thing that you need in order to beat it. And you have to fight enemies in a specific way. And that's one of the things with Konami's beat 'em ups, is that in terms of presentation, in terms of music, in terms of you know, how it plays, the pace and everything, you know, they nailed everything. But in terms of gameplay and difficulty, this is where they kind of faltered, because you have to play their games in a very specific way. So although TMNT 89 is an amazing game, but to me, based on my criteria and what's important for me in a beat 'em up, I would put this as a B. It's a great game, but it's not a game to me that I would go back and play as often. I know for some people it's their favorite beat 'em up. They have a lot of like nostalgia against it, but on the other hand, I think for me, what I value in beat 'em ups are pacing, you know, character mobility, combat, and those things. Obviously, the combat system relatively simple, but I think for me, the difficulty is not very balanced, or it becomes like a mono. You only have like one way to play the game, and it's very limiting. All right, in terms of beat 'em ups that are kind of in that era of the 80s, 90s, like late 80s, early 90s, Golden Axe falls in that category, the original Golden Axe. Yeah, Golden Axe, to me, obviously, a hack and slash that like brought something different than Double Dragon. So from that perspective, I felt like this game sort of brought in something completely different, because usually the games in that era, they used to sort of put together a formula of like urban beat 'em ups, you know, a guy that got captured, a guy with a girl that like his girlfriend got captured, so you need to sort of rescue the damsel in distress and then bring her and try to like beat whoever the boss is at the end of the day. But Golden Axe bred something different. It was like the first, I think, hack and slash beat 'em up. So from a presentation perspective, amazing presentation. The music was like very recognizable. They took basically Conan the Barbarian and copied everything from it. And also they put like a different type of gameplay with like a hack and slash. So you have a combo, but technically you don't have a grab. You can have like a throw, but the grabs themselves, you don't grab. You don't have it's a very simple mechanic. And I feel from that perspective, they made something unique. But if you play Golden Axe today, obviously it's not that interesting once you get past, you know, the wow factor. So to me, I put this as a B because it's similar to TMNT. The pacing is great, the presentation is great. I put it a notch above TMNT because once you learn the how it plays, in terms of difficulty, it's very fun to play. And also you can play it different ways. You can either play with the character only, or if you want to use the dragons, it gives you like freedom to use the characters the way you want. But in terms of gameplay, very simple gameplay. But to me, it says this is a B. It's definitely a B. Alright, speaking of other, so we talked about basically, so the big three during that era were Sega, Capcom, and Konami in terms of beat 'em ups. But other developers that were in that era, they weren't very known for making good beat 'em ups, but they kind of went under the radar. So one of them is Taito, and the other one is Irem. Irem and Taito was kind of like very good at development beat 'em ups, but not as well known as Sega or Capcom or Konami. They were kind of like the secondary ones, in addition to Data East. So for Taito, for example, they made a lot of like good brawlers. One of them is Growl. So Growl is kind of like similar to Golden Axe and TMNT. Very simple gameplay. But one thing that distinguishes Growl is the number of enemies that are on the on screen. I think it's one of the beat 'em ups that had the most characters in one screen. You could have I think at least 20 enemies on screen, and that's kind of unique. And also it had a like a theme that is completely different from what you used to do, like urban beat 'em ups or sorcery and stuff, fantasy and sorcery beat 'em ups, to like a beat 'em up that is about saving the animals and saving the nature. So it brought something completely different. In terms of 1cc, obviously, if you want to 1cc this game, there is only one thing you need to do, is pick up the whip, like Indiana Jones, and then whip everyone. The whip is so OP in this game that it kind of makes it a little bit too busted. But it balances this with the fact that it only gives you one life, and also you don't... the heals in that game, you only heal at the end of the stage, and you only get 1 HP back at the end of the stage. So it's kind of a balance, but overall it's a good challenge. But in terms of gameplay, I put it in the same category as TMNT Golden Axe, so it's a B in my opinion. A strong B, but definitely not at A tier. But Taito were very, very good at developing beat 'em ups that, in terms of presentation, very, very well memorable, very fun gameplay. And also in this game, you can play up to 3 characters, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, Taito, another great beat 'em up developer. Another beat 'em up developer that were kind of like in that era, but not very popular. But actually, I got to know them as I was starting to explore, you know, beat 'em ups and retro games, were Irem. And Irem obviously is very well known for shmups, through obviously you know, R-Type and all the series that came after that, all the different shmups that they developed after that. But the R-Type company basically. But during the late 80s and early 90s, they developed a couple of great beat 'em ups, and one of those beat 'em ups is Hook. Hook is a sort of it's interesting beat 'em up because it's an interesting franchise. Like, Hook was quite big back then. Hook is kind of a movie that was, you know, very high budget at the time, and they kind of made the big mark in the movies, and they licensed it to a lot of like video games and stuff. And Irem, for some reason, took that franchise and decided to make a beat 'em up out of it. So it was kind of an interesting franchise to put a beat 'em up in. But it's a very good beat 'em up. A little bit on the harder side. Irem was very well known for putting like games that are relatively simple, but also deep in the mechanics. And Hook falls in that category of like, you have your combo and everything, but in terms of they had like hidden moves and stuff like that. So once you learn how to play the game, it's pretty good. And Hook, like, I really enjoyed playing Hook. You have like 4 characters, and like Peter Pan, you have the Lost Kids, and the way you play them is that everyone is very different, and you had like very good mechanics that kind of made the game feel a bit different than Final Fight, for example, because everyone back then, they were copying the Final Fight formula. But Hook has felt a little bit more different because you had your sort of like combos, but you can also use moves that are not like explicitly told in the how to play section. But in terms of yeah, like, to me, I would put Hook probably as a B, just because of the pacing, but also because of how the mechanics were. Very, very fun beat 'em up, but it's not an easy beat 'em up. And yeah, you're right, Prox. Yeah, a lot of weapons. Yeah, you can pick up like all the swords, all the those like throwable weapons as well. rocks, stuff like that. So it's you can use the environment to your advantage. It was popular here in the arcade in Poland. Interesting, because I never knew about Hook until I started, like, you know, recently. Maybe during the last 5 years is while I learned about Hook. So interesting that in Poland it was kind of like a big back then. I didn't think that it had like such a big distribution. But I don't think in the US it was that popular, like North America in general. All right, let's see another sort of brawlers. Since we talked about a lot about Double Dragon, obviously Double Dragon is a beat 'em up that, you know, doesn't need any introduction. The first Double Dragon, it's kind of a good beat 'em up, but it's kind of rough around the edges. The only thing that why Double Dragon is so memorable is because it kind of brought that sort of side-scrolling, belt-scrolling beat 'em ups with like a story and kind of like a story that sort of followed the character and stages that were like in and the stages that were a little bit more coherent, you know, one after the other. Renegade was the first one that kind of, I guess, looked at as the first belt scroller, but Double Dragon took that formula and made it sort of a logical, you know, follows a logical story, like through stage progression. You don't have only an arena to fight, you really have different stages with the boss in the end and the final boss. So Double Dragon sort of took that idea and made it like a different genre. So beat 'em ups, I would say, the way we know them today, if it wasn't for Double Dragon, I don't think we would have had, you know, Final Fight, Streets of Rage, all those like memorable beat 'em ups. So I think you can credit it for that sort of way of bringing the beat 'em up genre into light. But if you play it today, yeah, obviously it's very rough. A lot of slowdowns, a lot of issues with the obviously the moveset. Enemies are so difficult, and if you're not using the elbow, which is, you know, very busted, you're gonna have a difficult time actually beating it. Even if you don't use the elbow, it's still one CCable, but it's a difficult one to sort of go around when it comes to the mechanics. So this one is hard to put as an A because of how it plays. So I'm hesitant to put it as an A. But on the other hand, it's a beat 'em up that kind of like so memorable. Yeah. So is it better than Golden Axe? Is it better than TMNT? Is it better than Growl? To be fair, I don't think so. So definitely a B. But I think it gets the edge of maybe creating something that is until today the sort of the idea. Yeah, it's like a pioneer. So how do you put a pioneer game? But to me, like, if I have to rate it objectively, it's a B. I would even say it's probably a C if you put it in today's standards. But yeah, I think I rambled a lot about Double Dragon, but it's kind of like I wouldn't put that as a B, as an A for sure. Same with Renegade. I would say Renegade, it's kind of like, it's Double Dragon. It's a precursor to Double Dragon. So in a way, it's the one that created basically the belt scrolling genre. In terms of mechanics, they're easy to pick up. They're a little bit harder enemies are a bit janky. But in terms of, I think the fun factor, the way in terms of history, yeah, Renegade is kind of like, I put it in the same as Double Dragon. They kind of revolutionized the genre. They brought in something new. But yeah, I would say D tier because of the enemy AI. It's so jank. But in terms of, I would say, what brought it to the genre, yeah, I'm hesitated to put it as a B because it's so jank. Yeah, so if I have to rate it objectively, yeah, I would put it as a C. It's definitely a C in my opinion. Yeah, a D would be a little bit too harsh because it's still playable. Especially if in today's age, if you want to take the time to learn it. It's very playable. Yeah, but it's a hard one to put as a B or as an A. Double Dragon, at least it's you have that move, and it's kind of like you can abuse that move and win. With Renegade, you have to play fair with the enemies. Like, there are exploits and stuff, but if you're not on point, you get wrecked. Okay, let's dive into another developer that basically made a lot of beat 'em ups, but we're not like super well known for beat 'em ups, but they made some great bangers, and one of them was Bad Dudes. Bad Dudes is an interesting game because on one hand, you know, it was in that era of the late 90s, so we didn't have the Final Fight template, but they made something completely like unique and fun. And yeah, Bad Dude is such a it's a game that is very dear to my heart because it's so janky. Like, the presentation is so memorable, but the gameplay is so bad. So it's very playable, very good. Like, once you learn how to use the moveset and everything, it's pretty fun. It's a game that plays on one plane, so it's not a belt scroller. So it plays a little bit like Kung Fu Master, but it has its own unique presentation. It's a very fun game. It has some busted stuff in it, so if you're not using the weapons in that game, I think the 1cc is very hard. But once you know how to exploit a lot of stuff, like using the nunchuck, using the knife, using the jump kicks, I would say it's a game that is very good to play. It feels very good. It has a lot of replayability, and obviously it has one of the memorable lines in beat 'em ups. You know, I'm bad. And also you have the line that says, "Yeah, are you bad enough to rescue the president?" So, I mean, a lot of people I think know this game because of the NES port. But in terms of arcade, the arcade game is such a good game. I would put it as an A. Some people might disagree, but to me, in terms of fun factor, in terms of replayability, and in terms of mechanics, three things that make it very good. You can argue that, you know, sometimes the enemies are too jagged, the hitboxes are a bit too funny, and but overall, this is definitely a B from a fun factor and replayability perspective. Since we mentioned Kung Fu Master, Kung Fu Master is kind of like a brawler that, or sort of a side-scrolling brawler that that popularized the genre. A lot of people say this is the first beat 'em up or the first brawler. I would probably agree because it kind of nothing was closer to what it was. But this is a very fun game, and for me this is an easy A because in terms of like presentation, very good. In terms of pacing, obviously it's just a very short game. It's a game that loops indefinitely, but a playthrough lasts like 5 minutes. I think the biggest issue are the jumps and also the controls. So the controls are a bit funky, but once you get used to them, it's not too bad. So I'm hesitating to put it as an A because of how the mechanics are. It's not super polished. So maybe to be fair to the other games that I put as a B, I'm definitely gonna put this as a B. Maybe a little bit better than Golden Axe. A little bit better, sorry, than Double Dragon because of how it plays. It's a little bit more polished than Double Dragon because there are no slowdowns. The controls are a bit jank, but overall, once you get used to them, they're not too bad. And in terms of difficulty, it's once you learn it, it's not. Once you put your mind into it, it's one of those beat 'em ups that are relatively good to 1cc. So yeah, we spoke about Taito, we spoke about Data East. We spoke about obviously the big three. There was another developer that kind of wasn't known for beat 'em ups, but they made some very good beat 'em ups. And that one is Tecmo. Tecmo is kind of like a developer that went under the radar and was known for Rygar. So Rygar is a side scroller. That was kind of like I think what made them popular. But they made a couple of beat 'em ups that are like, to me, found very fun. And one of them is let me see in the list here. Just looking for I think just looking for Wildfang or Tecmo Knight. Just looking. Yeah, where is it? So we have Ninja Gaiden, but I can't seem to find this here. Alright. So yeah, Tecmo Knight is kind of a horror beat 'em up that came out in the era where they were like still experimenting with the genre. Yeah. And Wildfang. There you go. So Wildfang is kind of a beat 'em up that is an interesting mechanic because you're controlling a small dude, and then you can choose either to sort of ride a big guy. So it's like a small guy who's riding a big guy so that you can beat actually enemies with him, or you can choose to play and ride an animal. So it gives you that variety of gameplay where you can play both ways. It has a lot of horror in it, like fantasy horror, not really something very gory, but for the time it was pretty gory. But in terms of mechanic and fun factor, I would say Wildfang is a fun game. It's not an A to me because it's a bit of it's very hard to get into it because of like how the hitboxes are and the fact that you can only hit one enemy at a time. So if you cannot clump enemies. Like if you have two enemies overlapping of each other, when you hit, you will only hit one enemy. So that makes it a little bit harder to sort of get into. The crowd control is a bit trickier, but it's a lot of fun. It has a lot of fun. I would put it over Golden Axe. To me, this is very fun beat 'em up. It's very fun to get into, and yeah, it's anyway, a very unique take on this genre in terms of presentation. So another beat 'em up, another beat 'em up developer that kind of like didn't make a lot of beat 'em ups, but they made one beat 'em up that kind of like stuck with me, and that's Zero Team. So Zero Team is a game by Cebu Daihatsu, which is a shmup company, mostly known for anyway, the game that I played was Dynamite Duke, but they made a lot of like other shmups and shooting games. And yeah, Zero Team is kind of a brawler that took Final Fight's formula and copied it to the T, but they made it relatively fun because it added like some elements. They added like different characters, and they made it so that if you're holding up down, your combo actually changes. And also they give you like a defensive special that is that makes it like good for crowd control. But it was different from like say the Final Fights of this era. Yeah, exactly, Turbo. Yeah, one enemy at a time is a deal breaker for you. Yeah, yeah, for me too. It's kind of that's what made Final Fight fun, is the clumpage. You know, when you clump in enemies, you have a lot of enemies that are sort of, yeah, it's the fact that you have multiple enemies that you can beat at the same time, and that makes it very fun. But talking about Zero Team is a very good game. I put it as an A because it's it has a lot going for it. I would put it over Hook because in terms of replayability, you can play different characters. The stages are also very fun. The only thing that is difficult to put this as an S tier is the difficulty and also the damage values. That, like, enemies can destroy you. The AI can destroy you in 2-3 hits in the later stages. And it has like a ranking system where enemies become like harder as you progress. And the late stages, especially the final stage, is super, super hard because they don't give you any heals. Or the heals are very random. And that makes it very, very challenging. But it's a very fun beat 'em up once you learn how to play it. Yeah, so let's go to maybe other beat 'em ups here. Yeah, let's go to another company. Band Presto. So Band Presto, if you talk about publishers, yeah, Band Presto is kind of like a different, like a company that made different games across the board. And Denjin Makai is one of the games that they made. Actually, it wasn't Band Presto that made it. It was Wikisoft that made that game. But yeah, it's Denjin Makai is one of those games that, in my opinion, was I think very, very underrated because it's sort of plays very differently from all the beat 'em ups. It has like some traditional beat 'em up style, but it has like it added some movesets, and it added also a secondary bar where you can that you can charge, and that secondary bar actually makes it so that you can do special moves without any costs. And that wasn't something that was used in a lot of places, so it came up with like great ideas. Yeah, Bandai slash Band Presto, right? It was bought by Band Presto. It was bought by Bandai back then, right? But yeah, Denjin Makai, very, very good beat 'em up. Yeah, this is an A for me, easy. Especially the first one. The first one is a very, very good beat 'em up with a lot of great mechanics. As I said, the secondary bar that you can charge and you do special moves. It has like memorable stages, great presentation, very different characters. So yeah, no, it's definitely an easy A. But yeah, they made Denjin Makai, and then they made Denjin Makai 2 / Guardians. Yeah, since we're talking about Denjin Makai, so Guardians is kind of like they took that formula and they basically polished it. It's a great beat 'em up. I think in terms of gameplay and stuff, it's, in my opinion, better than Denjin Makai because I think it's more polished. But the problem with Denjin Makai 2 is the music. I think everyone who heard the music of Denjin Makai 2, it's kind of like an afterthought in that game. But I think in terms of gameplay and everything, it's probably better than Denjin Makai 1. And also in terms of difficulty, it's relatively on easy side once you learn what to do it. Presentation is great. I mean, yeah, there's not like to say. It's basically an improved version of Denjin Makai with different characters. And also I think you have 8 characters in that game. So like there is and they all play differently. And it has like a combo system, a juggle system. Anyway, yeah, Guardians or Denjin Makai 2, very, very good beat 'em up. Since we talked about, I think, Spartan X or Kung Fu Master, the sequel to Kung Fu Master or Spartan X was Vigilante. Actually, they were developing. So yeah, a little bit of a story about Vigilante. So first they were looking to do a sequel to Spartan X, and they were very, very well advanced when it comes to that. So they basically made a sequel to Spartan X, and I think there is a prototype of Spartan X. I don't think it was dumped. There was maybe there is 1 or 2 PCBs out there that exist in the in the wild. And Spartan X2 was basically the first game, but with better graphics, but pretty much the same system. And I think they were very, very close to releasing it, but then they decided to scrap everything because they wanted to appeal to the West. And they thought that if they released a game that is like very Japanese focused with like martial arts, but like very Japanese, yeah, I think what I read about it is that it was too Japanese in a way. Like, I think they wanted for it to appeal to like North American and Western markets. So they decided to scrap the whole concept and develop the Vigilante, which has the same system as Spartan X with like some additions, but they put everything in like a Western world. So you play in like an American guy that his girlfriend got kidnapped, and you're fighting like gangsters and stuff like that. So the presentation of Vigilante is very Americanized, Westernized, sort of urban style. And Vigilante, I think in terms of gameplay and stuff like that, it's better than Spartan X. It's a very fun beat 'em up, and or like side-scrolling beat 'em up. And so it's basically an enhanced version of Spartan X. But it's a relatively simple beat 'em up. So I would put it as probably, in terms of fun factor, better than Turtles. But probably not an A to me, because anyway, it's not a game that I like to sort of that I would go back to. I once succeeded, got through it, but that was it for me. It's not a game that I played as a kid as well, so maybe that is that factor of I'm looking at it from a perspective of, not nostalgia, but just gameplay in general, what I like about it. And obviously what I liked about it is its presentation, its simplicity, but there is not much to it. Like once you do it, it's like there's not much. All right, so I think we went through most of the developers. No, there's Taito, obviously. So I spoke about Taito, Data East. Who else? Yeah, spoke about Data East. Spoke about Sega. Yeah, all the most important bundle. But in terms of like other beat 'em ups that I sort of enjoyed, if we go back to Konami beat 'em ups, so Konami, as I said, they released Turtles, they released Simpsons, they released X-Men, so they made those like licensed beat 'em up that everyone loved and played as a kid and have good memories. So yeah, X-Men, I think to me it's an amazing beat 'em up with great presentation. In terms of gameplay, it's very Turtles like, closer to Turtles in some ways, but the good thing is that they improved the formula, they made it tighter, and I think in terms of character differences, they made the characters very well different. So although it takes the Konami formula of beat 'em ups with like 2 buttons and sort of but I think they improved by adding a special button. Also, they made the bosses very memorable. Like, I think, although it's very close to Turtles in some ways, but I think this is a very, very top tier beat 'em up. Like, I would definitely put it as an A, and maybe over Hook. Maybe not as good as Guardians and Dungeon Makai, but maybe within that in between. And since we're talking about licensed beat 'em up, there is the Simpsons. So Simpsons is a good brawler, but to me this is more like a TMNT game. It's basically a TMNT reskin in a way. It has some like differences, but it plays very close to TMNT. So if I'm putting TMNT as a B, yeah. And I'm not a super diehard fan of Simpsons, so like to me they're very equivalent. One is not better than the other. But yeah, Simpsons, very fun game with 4-player co-op. Everyone played it as a kid, and yeah, it's It's very memorable beat 'em up. Okay, speaking of maybe precursors of games, Altered Beast is a game that obviously came up before Golden Axe, so it's kind of like a beat 'em up that was popular back then, mostly for arcade. But I think what made it very popular and very memorable is the fact that it was released like as part of the Genesis lineup. When the Genesis came out in '89, all games that was released, all consoles that were released or that was sold, that were sold with Altered Beast. So that's why probably had very well known distribution and everyone knows about it. But the arcade game came up, I think, a year before. So it's kind of similar. It has similar mechanics to Bad Dudes, to like Spartan X, but with the twist that you get like transformations. So you're fighting enemies as a centurion, but then as you progress, you collect orbs and then you become a beast. And then once you become a beast, your abilities get better. You get more you get more busted. So it was an interesting concept, but in terms of gameplay, I would say it has a lot of issues with like jank hitboxes, and it's very hard to get into in today's age, honestly. Maybe it was revolutionary back then, but when you compare it to titles like that came out in the same time, like Renegade, like Spartan X, like Vigilante, I would say it's a very, very it's not an amazing game. So I'll put this as a C. It definitely doesn't deserve a D, but hey, it's a pretty good one. Pretty good beat 'em up if you're patient. And talking about, maybe we haven't ranked a game, we haven't put it a D yet. But if we want to talk about a very janky beat 'em up, this is gonna be my first D. Gang Wars. So Gang Wars, it's a beat 'em up that was made by I forgot the developer of that. Yeah, Gang Wars. Yeah, so Gang Wars is a game that was developed by Alpha Denshi. So Alpha Denshi is kind of was a company that sort of existed hand in hand with SNK. So they were kind of like the first party developer of SNK back then, before they released the Neo Geo, and after they released the Neo Geo, they sort of were kind of like their first party / second party developer of SNK. So they helped them develop the arcade hardware and everything. And SNK was back then trying to get into the hype of the beat 'em ups. They developed Prisoners of War, and right after that they decided to develop an urban beat 'em up. So they developed Gang War. So Gang War is kind of like a worst version of Double Dragon. It plays relatively close to Double Dragon in some ways. You have a kick button, you have a punch button, and you have a jump button, but it has a lot of issues when it comes to movement. Also, your movements are delayed. So for example, if you move down, your character doesn't stop when you stop walking. There is a delay. And also the jumps are very well delayed. So anyway, and also the enemies are super jank. Anyway, this game, although it's 1ccable, it's one of the worst games that I played probably. It was one of the worst beat 'em ups. And I played it once, although I got a deathless in it. I was patient enough to learn it to get a deathless on it. But that was the first time and the last time I would play it, probably. Speaking of another D game, yeah, so Spartan X, and Vigilante, when they came out, obviously they were relatively popular. And one company that decided to sort of copy that idea was Buccaneers. It's a Spanish company that basically decided to actually copy Vigilante. So Vigilante or Buccaneers is kind of like a reskin of Vigilante. It plays the same. It has like relatively the same moveset. They even stole the sound effects from Vigilante and other companies. But yeah, it's a 5-minute game, relatively relatively short, but also once you learn how to deal with it, it's not that difficult. But in terms of gameplay, once you play it, I would say it's a terrible game. So there's not a lot to say about it in terms of gameplay. It's basically Vigilante but worse. So it's definitely a D to me. Maybe Gang War is definitely worse. At least Buccaneers is more playable and has a fun factor. It's a pirate theme beat 'em up. So at least in terms of presentation, it has more things going on for it than Gang Wars, and it has like that charismatic thing that going for it. But in terms of gameplay and stuff, definitely a D tier. Moving on to maybe obviously a very good beat 'em up. You know, that doesn't need any introduction. Streets of Rage. Obviously, Streets of Rage series. I put Streets of Rage 4 as an S tier. You know, the whole series, Streets of Rage 1, 2, and 3. Yeah, Streets of Rage 1 was developed, obviously, by Sega in consoles to as a response to Final Fight. The first game, Streets of Rage 1, was kind of a game that very simple, but also I think in terms of mechanics, it's a simple game. It took some things from Final Fight, and considering, you know, it was developed by the same team who made the Altered Beast, who made the you know, Alien Storm, who made, you know, games that were back then, like Golden Axe, for example. So they didn't really take Golden Axe and copied it. They sort of took stuff from Golden Axe and also mixed something from Final Fight. So in terms of enemy clumpage, in terms of combos, in terms of throws, those are very similar to Final Fight. But the fact that you have a special button, they took it pretty much from Golden Axe. It was like a panic button. And yeah, Streets of Rage was kind of like a game that is relatively simple, but also very fun to play. I wouldn't put, I'm not gonna put it as an S because it's not a game that has like a lot of things. Like, it's a very simple game, but in terms of fun factor, in terms of simplicity, it's one of definitely the best beat 'em ups in the console. I would put it before Alien versus Predator for the only reason is that in terms of pacing, it's a great game. And also in terms of nostalgia, for me, Streets of Rage 1 was the first Streets of Rage that I played. So maybe there is like a little bit of a bias to put it in this as an A. But definitely not an S, because like for me, for it to be an S, it has to have more, especially in like if I'm rating it compared to others. It's definitely not a Streets of Rage 4. It's not a Cadillacs and Dinosaur, but it's a very fun game. And since we're talking about Streets of Rage, so Streets of Rage 2, obviously it doesn't need any introduction. It's one of the games that basically took Final Fight formula and perfected it to the max. It added a lot of things to Final Fight. The differences between Streets of Rage 1 and 2, it's huge. It's like night and day. A lot of the times it's like when games come out, when sequels come out, they basically incremental changes. But in terms of what Streets of Rage brought to the genre, they took Final Fight, as I said, and they added way more things, like the special button. Like Final Fight only had like the special, like the defensive special. So Streets of Rage added the offensive special, the way we know it. It added the Blizz attack, which was something that is still used per today. It added like obviously amazing bosses. The way the game flows, everything, man, in that game is perfect. You can argue that in terms of movement, it's very limiting sometimes because obviously, but it's limiting only if you play on Mania. If you play, and Mania was not a difficulty that was designed by default. It It was a difficulty that was designed as a hidden or a bonus for people. So I'm not gonna hold it against the game for not having freedom of movement when enemies are so fast. But in terms of you know, everything else, you know, it's the perfect game. It's a perfect beat 'em up. There is not a lot actually that I would say I can criticize about Streets of Rage 2. Yeah, so it's a game that basically made Final Fight better. And yeah, obviously we all know about you know, Streets of Rage. Like it's still a franchise that lives until today, and the fact that for a console game, it's an amazing console game. Like the fact that they were able to program it for its Sega Genesis and have it play the way it is with not a lot of slowdowns. Obviously, it has some issues, but overall, for a game that came out in the Sega Genesis, I think it beats a lot of arcade games by a mile. Like it, to me, it's way better than a lot of those beat 'em ups that came out on the arcades. All right, moving on to other games that I played that are not, you know, released by Sega or anything. Karate Blazers. So Karate Blazers is a beat 'em up that was developed by I forgot the name. Let me see here. Developed by Video System. Yeah, Video System was an arcade company that came out in I think it was late 80s with like a couple of games, but it was mainly known anyway. If you talk about Video System, you think about Aero Fighters as their franchise, but they wanted to get into the beat 'em up hype and the beat 'em up genre, and they developed Karate Blazers. So Karate Blazers is sort of an interesting take on the genre because it doesn't copy a lot of things. It takes a little bit of Final Fight, it takes a little bit of Double Dragon, but it brings its own twist. So you're fighting, you know, you have a kick button, you have a jump button, and you have like special moves, or not special moves, but like similar to like a blitz button, I would say, a blitz move. But it, so if you press, for example, right and attack or right and jump, your character does a special attack that doesn't cost health, but it, depending on who you're using, that move actually is the go-to if you're looking to 1cc the game, especially if you're playing as a specific character like Glenn, more specifically. It's a go-to move. So it added little different things, and also it uses like a scroll system where you're collecting scrolls, and then those scrolls are used basically as a panic button. So if you get overwhelmed by enemies, you sort of use it, and then it kills all the enemies, or it does huge damage to the enemies on screen. And I found that very interesting. The biggest problem with Karate Blazers are the hitboxes and the enemy AI, and I think that's I would have put it as a B, honestly, because to me, when I played that game, it was very, very good. I really enjoyed it, but the fact that like the enemy AI is so so unfair, and the fact that you only have to play one character in order to 1cc it. Like we're talking general difficulty. Maybe other players did a 1cc with other characters, but the fact that you have to play it a certain way, it's and also it's very limiting. I would put this as a C. And yeah, definitely maybe better than Altered Beast. Like I had more fun with this is the hard one because Altered Beast I had a lot of fun with it, but Karate Blazers 2 I had fun playing it. Maybe Altered Beast. I put Altered Beast. Yeah, I'll give Altered Beast the edge just because of how memorable the characters are in Altered Beast. The presentation of Altered Beast definitely much better than Karate Blazers. Although the like Karate Blazers came in. Yeah, Karate Blazers came out like. Yeah, when did it come out? 1991. Altered Beast came out in 88. So yeah, it's gonna be a long one. Yeah, maybe I'm gonna try to like go faster because yeah, so I don't repeat myself and stuff like that. Maybe just talk about like 2-3 things that I like. Maybe two things that I like about the game and 2 things that I don't like about the game, so that it goes faster, because I feel like we're gonna be here for like 3 hours. Yeah. All right, Punisher. Okay, Punisher, obviously amazing game, great Capcom game. 2 things I like about it: great combat system, amazing moveset, and maybe the third thing is that it has the Punisher franchise in it, so memorable bosses and stuff. What I don't like about the game is the shooting system. It's a bit undercooked when it comes to like, so basically this game is like a mix of beat 'em up, but also there are some sections where when you have enemies with guns, the Punisher or Nick Fury shoot, use the gun, but the gun, the way you use it is that you don't control the target, and sometimes that can be a hurdle. So it's a great game. I mean, in terms of S tier and in terms of difficulty, it's an amazing difficulty balance for a game that is arcade based. But I don't like the fact that that shooting system, and also some bosses are relatively like Gargoyle, for example, the big armor will kind of like make it not as S tier in my opinion. And yeah, exactly. It's only one character basically. You're right. It's only basically Punisher, but if you want to play Nick Fury and Punisher are very much the same. There is like minor differences in terms of hitboxes, to the moveset, but it's not like a very different with both. Yeah. Okay, Captain Commando. Since we're talking about it, Captain Commando is kind of like a final fight, but worse, because enemies like your character doesn't do a lot of damage, and although the stages are amazing, the gameplay is amazing, presentation is amazing, but to me this is not an A tier because of how basically the damage of the enemies is. But in terms of gameplay, very, very good. But I'll put this as a B. It's a strong B for sure. Okay, yeah. Since we talked about a Final Fight like 100 times, I think Final Fight is kind of like an S tier. I mean, I struggle with Final Fights because there is a lot of Final Fight that did. Final Fight is an amazing game because it revolutionized the genre. But in terms of difficulty, that's where I struggle with Final Fight, is the difficulty in enemy AI and lack of iframes, and those are very, very important to me. Prevent it from being an S tier game, in my opinion anyway. Some people would say, well, Final Fight is kind of like the template, but I think Final Fight was developed with great mechanics, but what holds it back, in my opinion, and yeah, we have to put ourselves in that context. It was the first game and everything, but the fact that lack of iframes and AI wanted to fuck you up at any time, makes it an A for me. Not a just for those reasons, but obviously Final Fight, it's the perfect template for any beat 'em up that was basically perfected over the and yeah, it's an insanely hard game. It's mainly the AI, man. The AI, like, they programmed some characters, the way they programmed and gave them a lot of things that overpower you, and the fact that you're doing a lot of you were doing a lot of things right, and then the AI decides to fuck you up, and then you lose. That holds it back for me. Will you clip this stream? Yeah, I think I'm gonna probably clip it and upload it to YouTube for sure. I'll see how long the video is. If it's like a 4-hour video, I don't think it's gonna be a 4-hour video. I'm trying to speed it up a little bit. But I definitely gonna upload it if it's like a 2-hour video max, right? Yeah, what I'll do, maybe I'll do like part 1, 2, and 3. I'll see how I do it. But yeah, I didn't prepare like a script for this. I'm just going like freestyle and picking up a game and talking about it like for a little bit. But yeah, we'll see. Yeah, let's talk about I think other D tier games. 99 Vidas. So 99 Vidas is a Brazilian developed games that came up I think 2016, 2017, something like that. It's a good beat 'em up. But the problem is the difficulty and the fact that they took a good formula. So basically they took the formula from Crashers mostly. And all the beat 'em ups that came up during that time. Um, what is it? What is it called? Yeah, what is it called? I forgot the Scott Pilgrim, Scott Pilgrim, Castle Crashers. Those were like beat 'em up that came out during that period. So they took that formula and sort of copied it. And 99 Vidas is a good beat 'em up to play, but in terms of difficulty, in terms of boss design, to me this is a D. It's definitely better than the others, but it's not a fun beat 'em up to play. It has some cool mechanics. It has also a system that is like fun. You upgrade your character. Like it's a roguelite a little bit where you collect money and then you purchase abilities. But the bosses are not fun at all. All right, Crime Fighters. Crime Fighters is a Konami beat 'em up that is like I would say developed in the late 80s, very close to TMNT. Plays very close to TMNT, but obviously it has like some different mechanics. It's an urban style. It's an amazing beat 'em up in terms of presentation. Super funny, but the issue with it is that you have to play it in a certain way. You have to fight bosses a specific way. Definitely better than TMNT just because of the presentation, how funny it is. But I put it in the B category because it's relatively limited when it comes to the move set. When it comes to difficulty, it's relatively bad. Yeah. Yeah, it's a bit janky. Yeah, like the hitboxes, your hitboxes are relatively small. If you wanna, if you don't have the like, if you don't have the knife, so technically with that game, what you need to do is the use the knife and beat up the enemies, or use the gun. And if you use the gun, you're like there's some busted stuff in that game. But if you're just fighting the enemies with like your fists, if you're not using the back attack, if you're not using the knife, or if you're not using the gun, uh, you become very limited with the enemies. Like if you want to play it skillfully, right? Yeah, but it's a fun game. I agree. But the funny thing is that 2 years later, they came up with Crime Fighters, and Crime Fighters is a completely different game. Uh, it plays a little bit like a Konami beat 'em up. So they kept their formula of Konami, where it's like two buttons and one special button. But man, yeah, Crime Fighters 2 is it's like it's the difference between Streets of Rage 1 and 2. It's like they took the same formula but perfected it and made it so fun. And Crime Fighters to me is definitely an easy A, because it's so fun. The boss is memorable. Everything is good about it. All right, we spoke about Final Fight, so I'm going like very, very differently with the games. I'm not following a specific order or specific theme. I'm just picking up games and talking about it. So Final Fight 2, it's interesting that Final Fight 1 came up and then they decided to put Final Fight 2 as a console game for the SNES. So Final Fight 2 is basically took the same things as Final Fight 1, polished it a little bit, but what holds back Final Fight 2 is the fact that it was developed on the SNES, so the hardware limitations were relatively high. So it's not as a good beat 'em up because of the hardware limitations, and also especially if you're playing on top difficulty, they went nuts with the health bars. They like tripled the health bars. What not to do for high difficulty is give the enemies like high damage and make them so tanky, and that's what Final Fight 2 did. And that's why I'm putting it as a C, because it's definitely it's an okay game to play mechanically, but it's a bad game to play. It's not fun at all. But then they came back with Final Fight 3 3 years later, 1995, and Final Fight 3 basically it's a late era SNES beat 'em up. 95, so 95, for an SNES it came out like relatively later. So beat 'em ups were starting to become not as popular. But it's a game that basically took a different take on Final Fight. They didn't try to copy Final Fight 2, or like they didn't only take Final Fight 2. They took the mechanics of Final Fight 1 and added like little things, like the run. They added the special button. They added the like different moves. Like it's basically they added like some fighting game mechanics to it, and they made it like way more fun. The biggest issue with Final Fight 3 are still the hitboxes. I find them a little bit rough around the edges, but like there's a lot of variety with the characters. It caters to a lot of people. So if you like brawler characters, if you like different like grappling characters, this is the game that is basically very, very fun to play. And I put it as definitely an A, because it's super fun. Is it better than X-Men? Is it better than Denjin Makai? Yeah, to me, I would say it's definitely better than Bad Dudes, but not better than Hook, in my opinion. And since we're talking about yeah, we'll wrap it up with Final Fight basically series. I played Final Fight, Mighty Final Fight on the NES. So in this list, I don't think there is a lot of NES games that I played, but Mighty Final Fight is an amazing beat 'em up for an NES. Obviously, you have to take the hardware limitations, but it's kind of like a little RPG beat 'em up. The RPG piece is like King of Dragons, where you just power up with score. So you have increased difficulties using score. So it adds that element of like strategy, and also the fact that if you want to power up faster, you can use certain moves that will give you more score. But for an NES beat 'em up, this is a very, very good game. I put it as an A as well, because I had a lot of fun with it. Simple game, but pretty good. Moving on to Golden Axe. Yeah, let's wrap up maybe the Golden Axe series. So with Golden Axe, Revenge of Dead Adder. Golden Axe Revenge of Dead Adder is an arcade exclusive. Came out after Golden Axe 1. I think they came around the same time as Golden Axe 2. But to me, Golden Axe Revenge of Death Adder is the true sequel to the first Golden Axe. Golden Axe 2 on the Genesis was kind of like the same game. It's not a true sequel in my opinion. In terms of story, in terms of, I think, continuity, Golden Axe Revenge of Death Adder to me is the true sequel. They took the formula of Golden Axe, but they made it better. It's not a super different in terms of mechanics, but in terms of let's see. I'm just gonna put the sorry. So I just realized the music was off. But yeah, Golden Axe 2 is basically everything better. Presentation, presentation, graphics, music, gameplay. The only thing with Golden Axe is that you're fighting the bosses the same way. It didn't make things way more different than Golden Axe 2, but it's a more Golden Axe 1, but it's a more polished game, so we'll give it an A. To me, this is definitely, like, to me, and for my personal taste, I like this game a lot, way more than the others here, although it's a simple game. And speaking of Golden Axe 2, so Golden Axe 2 is basically Golden Axe 1, but with more polished mechanics, like this compared to the Genesis. It's not as polished as Golden Axe Revenge of Death Adder, but it's a good game. The reason why I'm not gonna put it as an A is because it's not a memorable game. Like, music is not amazing. There is nothing different that makes it unique, and that's why I'm gonna put it as a B because of that. I think in terms of ranking, it's definitely not as good as Golden Axe 1. Although it's more polished, but it didn't bring anything new. So that's why maybe I'll put it here. I had more fun than, for example, Growl or Spartan X, but it's still not as good, in my opinion. And then you have Golden Axe 3. Yeah, Golden Axe 3 is sort of a game that came out. It doesn't have a good recognition. Like, everyone talks about Golden Axe 1 and 2 being their favorite Golden Axe. Golden Axe 3 gets a lot of flack. And honestly, Golden Axe 3 has a lot of great mechanics. Yeah, to me, when I played it, like the things they introduced to it, yeah, with the differences in characters, with like the hidden moves, yeah, amazing. And also the fact that you have branching paths, the replayability, you know, the differences, the character makes it an amazing game, and I really enjoyed it. But yeah, I agree with you in terms of graphics, procs. That's what it holds it back. Yeah, in my opinion, Golden Axe 3 is kind of like a game that should look better for a 1993 game, 1994, I think, game. But in terms of gameplay, it's definitely a B. It's definitely a B. I like it better than Golden Axe 2. It plays much better. But yeah, graphically, it's definitely an amazing game, yeah. And yeah, do I enjoy it better than The Simpsons and Turtles? Maybe, probably. Yeah, it should probably go up the list. Maybe slightly. Like, to me, Golden Axe 1 is a better game because it's so legendary. Golden Axe 3, mechanically, it's a better game, but in terms of like ranking, I would put them like close to each other. And speaking of games that play relatively similar, so there is Alien Storm. Alien Storm is a game that came out after Golden Axe, so it's basically was developed by the same teams that made Golden Axe, Alter Beast. It was like called the Shinobi team. It plays the same as Golden Axe in a way. Like, it's a different setting. You're fighting aliens. You're fighting with a weapon. Like, you're still fighting the same way as Golden Axe. It's a hack and slash kind of, but with a weapon, with a non-sword basically. You don't have a combo. You have like a combo, but you cannot like grab enemies and stuff like that. But it's a game that, in addition to beat 'em up, it added like other genres. It added like run and gun, and also it had like some screens where you're shooting, you know, the rail shooter. So it's a very varied game. It's very fun to learn. The arcade version is very, very difficult, but to me, I really enjoyed it because it's a fun play once you get into it. So for this reason, I'm gonna put it as an A. Is it better than Final Fight 3? Is it better than Hook? No. But it's a very fun game. So I'll put it maybe above Bad Dudes because it's a cool game. And yeah, difficulty-wise, if you like tough games for 1cc purposes, this game is for you, for sure. And talking about hack and slash games, yeah, let's talk about King of Dragons. So King of Dragons is sort of a Dungeons and Dragon game that was developed by Capcom before they got the Dungeons and Dragon license. So it's sword and sorcery game. It has a lot of good stuff going for it. And it's yeah, hey Captain Gordon, how's it going? Yeah, we're rating the games, man, the D&D stuff. We're gonna rate the D&D trilogy. King of Dragons is a very, very fun game. It's a brawler that doesn't, like, for a game that came out in 91 where there was a lot of hype about Final Fights and Capcom was capitalizing on the Final Fight formula. King of Dragons play completely different. You don't have a combo system. You just have characters like, you know, hack and slash, kind of like hidden enemies, and you don't have a combo finisher. So you keep hitting enemies until you knock them down. But it has a very good system where you power up with score. So your character gets more powerful as you progress. And the good thing about it is the presentation of King of Dragons. The combat system and the presentation is what makes it, to me, an A-tier game. I would probably put it, maybe personally, I would put it above all of these games. Just because of how fun it is. It's a simple game. It's very accessible if you want to learn to once you see it. If you're not like into crazy hardcore beat 'em up, this is one of the good beat 'em ups that is very well balanced. It's a bit long. You can argue 16 stages, about 45 minutes. But in terms of like presentation, in terms of gameplay, in terms of variety, you can, if you want to play the range characters, like elf or wizard, or if you wanna like a melee character, like a fighter, dwarf, or cleric. So you can play like different styles, and it's a very, very fun game. Difficulty wise, it's, as I said, average, because although there's some very, very difficult spots in that game, like especially the double bosses and the like the Black Knights, the Black Knights fight, and maybe the middle game is very rough around the edges, but overall they give you enough lives to get through the game if you don't mess it up too much. And then after Capcom developed the King of Dragons, 3 years later, they got the D&D license. I think they wanted to develop the D&D game so badly that they ended up basically trying to seduce the D&D franchise holders. And they got their D&D game, and that's D&D Shadow or Tower of Doom. Yeah, D&D Tower of Doom is an amazing game. I mean, Capcom, the good thing with Capcom is that they developed Final Fight, but they didn't start making Final Fight clones left and right. Like, they made, you know, the Punisher, you can say the Punisher, you know, Cadillacs and Dinosaurs, you know, those like Capcom clones in a way, Capcom clones, Final Fight clones, but they kept innovating in the genre. And D&D is one of those games that like plays as a beat 'em up, but it's way more than a beat 'em up. It has amazing like presentation. The amount of secrets in that game, it's insane. It's like, I don't know why they developed this as an arcade game, but yeah, for a game that came out in the arcades, it's like it has so many secrets, so many things to discover. The way it's presented, I think it's one of the best presentations, and it's an amazing, like, you know, gameplay. It has like different characters, as I said. You have a character that powers up using, you know, like it has basically an economy system where you kind of collect money, buy power-ups and stuff, and also like get experience. It's basically an RPG, but for arcades. And to me, this is an easy A. I wouldn't put it as an S, because in my opinion, there's some things that holds it back from being an S. And mainly the way the RNG is designed, it's relatively difficult to get into. I would put it above. Yeah, I would, like, in my opinion, I would put it above King of Dragons because it's more complex. But in terms of anyway, the randomness is what holds it back. And also, although it is a beat 'em up, but I think they wanted to follow the D&D rules so much that they tried to not make it as close to a beat 'em up like Final Fight. Which brings us to D&D Shadow over Mystara, which is basically what they took. They took everything that worked for D&D Tower of Doom, and they made it to their taste in terms of beat 'em up. And this is, to my opinion, you can argue that it's like, yeah, the bosses are very exploitable, but to me, this is an easy S tier. I prefer it, personally, I prefer it more than Tower of Doom, because of it gives you way more freedom. It has less randomness in it, And also the bosses like are, in my opinion, way more memorable in Mystara compared to Tower of Doom. I mean, they recycle a lot from Tower of Doom, but they added a lot of stuff to it. Way more secrets, and also way more characters. Tower of Doom had 4 characters. This one had 6 characters, and they all play differently. So yeah, Tower of Doom, amazing game, S tier. Okay, let's close off basically the other series or franchises. Talk about Double Dragon 2. So Double Dragon 2 is the sequel to Double Dragon 1, but they fixed a lot of stuff that was wrong with Double Dragon 1, like the slowdowns. But they brought back the Renegade system where punching and kicking depends on your. It's very situational. So if you're on the right, if you press the left buttons, yeah. So they took the Renegade system, which is you attack based on what you're facing. So your punch depends on the if you're looking right or left, etc. And basically they brought back that system, which is a little bit confusing, but once you get into it, it's a very good game. Is it a great game? I don't think this is it's definitely a better game than Double Dragon. But what holds it back, in my opinion, is the way it was designed. Basically, if you play on default difficulty, it wasn't designed with the 1cc in mind. Like, it's 1ccable, but the fact that the final stage, the time limit is very, very strict, makes it so that the difficulty of or having to 1cc it consistently becomes a difficult thing to do. So I put this as definitely a B. Is it better than The Simpsons and Turtles? In my opinion, yes. Like, I'm not a big fan of Turtles the same way as Double Dragon. Like, if I have to replay a game, I'll take Double Dragon 2 over Turtles and Simpsons. All right, Double Dragon 3. Double Dragon 3 is a jank game. Yeah, like, everyone hates Double Dragon 3, but in my opinion, the fact that it has a jerky movement, it's like, in terms of fun factor, in my opinion, it's definitely a B. But in terms of jankness, yeah, it's definitely a D. So yeah, this beat 'em up was developed with it's very rough around the edges. It doesn't control very well. So I'll put it as a C, just in between, because because I really enjoyed it. I don't know, it's hard to explain, but once you get into Double Dragon 3, and I'm talking about the Japanese version, which is the version that is 1cc friendly. Double Dragon 3, in my opinion, is a strong C. I would have put it as a B, but to be fair to the other games that I put as a C, I would say, yeah, this is definitely a strong C. And yeah, talk about maybe the final game in Double Dragon. The final, I'd say, numbered Double Dragon 4 that is part of the series. Although this one, I wouldn't consider it as part of the main series. It's a spin-off. But yeah, Double Dragon 4 is a game that came out in 2017. It's sort of a homage to Double Dragon 2 on the NES. The way it plays very close to Double Dragon 2 NES, but they made like a lot of characters playable. Like, all the enemies you can play in that game. It's a simple game. It gets a lot of flack because it's like the way it looks, the way it plays, very simple. But to me, from a fun factor perspective, this game wasn't made basically as a continuation to Double Dragon 3. It was made with the mind that, like, hey, we're gonna put this game, pretty good game, like, as a homage to the old games. So fun factor, I would say, is a lot, plays a lot in my decision to put it as a B, and maybe a strong B, because of that. But if you look at like the flaws of the game, obviously the game is not very well polished. If you want to win, you have to use specific characters. but the fun factor of it is amazing. And since we're talking about Double Dragon, so there is actually the Double Dragon. There's a we talk about Double Dragon 4, but the real Double Dragon 3 is not the actual Double Dragon 3, because the Double Dragon 3 was developed by a different company than Technos. It was basically outsourced to a third party. But the Combat Ride, which came out during the same period as the Double Dragon 3, is the true Double Dragon 3. It plays very close to Double Dragon. It has that distinctive techno style. Very fun game, very tight in terms of difficulty. It has like say difficult bosses, so I would put it as a B just because of how fun the gameplay is. Yeah, so this is definitely a B, better than all of these. The hardest part I would say is the final boss, where the final stage, where it's super tight. But yeah, it's kind of like a difficult game to sort of get into at the beginning, but once you learn it, it's pretty fun. And yeah, continuing with Double Dragon Advance. Double Dragon Advance is kind of like a reboot, you know, of Double Dragon, but they made it much more accessible and much more fun. This game is, in my opinion, the best Double Dragon game that out there. It plays amazing. It has like all the jank of Double Dragon when it comes to AI, but in terms of polish, this is definitely the best Double Dragon. I'm gonna put this as an A because it's very solid. Put it a little bit maybe here. Yeah, I'm gonna try to go faster because I feel like this is gonna be a long one. Yeah. Alright. And to finish off with all the Double Dragons that I once CC'd, Double Dragon Gaiden is a game that came out 2-3 years ago. And it was kind of like a very good beat 'em up that didn't try to copy anything. When it first came out, people didn't like it because of it took like a roguelite approach with all the money stuff, and sort of it doesn't play like a true beat 'em up like you know, Streets of Rage 4, that kind of stuff. But it was like they took their own spin on the beat 'em up genre, and they made it like Double Dragon. It's not a Double Dragon game, to be honest. It's just that it's a roguelite that has Double Dragon characters in it, but it pays very good homage to Double Dragon, and it plays very well. You have like a lot of characters, and through through time they patched the game multiple times to make it better. They adjusted the difficulty. They removed some of the annoying stuff that were in the game, like, you know, the pop-ups when you beat enemies. Because in this game, a lot of it relies on, if you knock down the enemies with a special move, if you knock on through 3 enemies or more, you get heals, and this is how basically you sort of keep your combo, and you capitalize on that system so that you get heals and you get your combo, you know, going. So yeah, they got rid of that pop-off every time you beat those enemies. That was annoying. And also they made the characters way more powerful. Maybe too powerful sometimes. But honestly, I'd rather have a game that is fun to play, a little bit busted, but more fun to play than the other way around, when you make enemies harder and everything. It's like they took the route of, we're gonna give characters more power and make it more fun, as opposed to Street of Rage 4, where they took the approach of, we gotta make our game harder. So yeah, to me, this is definitely an easy A. Is it better than Punisher? Is it better than King of Dragons? I'm gonna put it in between, because I like this game better than King of Dragons. Alright, let's talk about Turtles in Time. So this is not the arcade version. I haven't played the arcade version. It's part of the yeah, I would say it's part of the series of the games that I want to play. But this is the SNES version. So TMNT Turtles in Time SNES version is kind of being praised as the better Turtles in Time. I haven't played TMNT Turtles in Time to assess it, to be honest. But I feel like a lot of it is because, you know, people like the presentation and difficulty of the SNES version more than the arcade version. The arcade version, I think, in terms of difficulty, is very, very rough. But I feel like the presentation of the arcade version is much more. It's better. But anyway, I'm not judging the both yet because I haven't played the arcade version, so I'll make my opinion after I play it. But the SNES version, I'd say it's a good game. I really enjoyed it. Like the 1cc, the Deathless run that I've done is pretty good. But I feel like it's lacking. Like in terms of stage design, amazing stage design, amazing progression, everything else. The gameplay is what I have issues with. The run is jank. The hitboxes are a bit rough around the edges sometimes. So those things hold it back to me for being an A. So this is definitely not an A game for me. I'll put it as probably better than these games over here. Maybe it's the best B game I've played so far. Which brings us to the other counterpart, which is Hyperstone Heights. Hyperstone Heights is because back then Konami, basically when they were releasing games, they were releasing SNES games exclusively for the SNES. And I think they had like some so when you look at, for example, Contra, they had like Contra, Castlevania, and Turtles. So they had two different games for the two different systems. And yeah, Turtles Hyperstone Heist is the equivalent of Turtles in Time, but for the Genesis. But it's a completely different game in terms of gameplay, in terms of stage design. I think Turtles in Time is technically, in my opinion, a better game gameplay-wise. It has a better gameplay than Turtles in Time, but the stage design, it's much worse. So, to me, the reason why I'm gonna put it as an A is because of the gameplay. The combat system is so good. Like, it beats Turtles in Time by a mile. I would put it maybe as a B because of the stages. But to be fair, like, the way I value combat in beat-em-ups, the reason why I like it so much is because of the combat, and the combat to me is what makes it a very, very strong A game. Yeah, we're doing a tier list, Richabus. Yeah. Yeah, welcome, man. Welcome. Hope you're good. You cannot beat the first boss in the River City Girls? Yeah, River City Girls. Well, since we're talking about River City Girls, to me, this was, I think, the second beat-em-up I once CC'd. Back then, I wasn't big on arcade games and, like, pacing and stuff like that. So I played it, not with the mindset that I like arcade games, but I really enjoyed it because of like the progression system, or the fact that you can level up, and you can like buy move stat and like stuff like that. But today, today I would never play River City Girls. If I had that mindset, if I didn't play River City Girls right at the beginning of my 1cc journey, I would say I wouldn't go back to it. But yeah, River City Girl is kind of like a I would say an adventure game. I consider it more of an adventure game with combat system rather than a true arcadey beat 'em up. And that's why I personally don't like River City Girls from that perspective, because of the pacing, because how you fight combat. And basically for this game, the way you play it, you just need to like basically beat up enemies, skip a lot of stuff, and basically beat enemies that give you more money, and then purchase the OP movesets, and then go and beat the bosses. And that's not something that I enjoy in beat 'em ups. But to rank it like excluding those impacts, because for me those are important. If I only rank it based on the fact that like fun factor and mechanics and pixel art and presentation and moveset and all that stuff, this is definitely a strong B. I would put it as maybe, yeah, like the weakest B, just because of how it is. Yeah, the art direction is cute. Yeah, the presentation is amazing, man. That presentation is amazing. But yeah, exactly. It's not a traditional beat 'em up. And the reason why I have it here is because I played it when I was first exploring the beat 'em up genre. So in a way, I find it a little bit not. It doesn't cater to my style. But nothing wrong with the game. Like, the game itself is great. I feel like River City Girls 2 made things better sometimes. Made some things better, some things worse. But yeah, River City Girls, it's a good beat 'em up, or it's a good brawler if you like that, like, more of a longer style. Which brings us to I think, okay, let's talk about one of my favorite Streets of Rage games, Streets of Rage 3. Streets of Rage 3, obviously, it's not a very well liked game compared to Streets of Rage 2, but to me, the combat system is what makes the biggest difference in Streets of Rage 3. I personally like it better than Streets of Rage 2 because of the combat system. I understand the issues around difficulty and, you know, like pacing and all that kind of stuff. But to me, this is definitely my favorite beat 'em up. Maybe not my favorite beat 'em up of... I would say maybe not the best beat 'em up of all time. I agree with a lot of people who say that this is not a great beat 'em up. I agree with the opinions, but to me personally, this is definitely my favorite beat 'em up because of the combat system. I really like that game so much. Which brings me to Bare Knuckle 3. So, as opposed to Streets of Rage 3, Bare Knuckle 3 is kind of like a beat 'em up that is fun to play. You would think that Streets of Rage 3 and Bare Knuckle 3 are similar in terms of combat system. I would agree. But in terms of hitboxes, in terms of mechanics, they're very, very different. And that's why Bare Knuckle 3 to me is a worse game. Because, like, for example, the roll mechanic in Bare Knuckle 3 is useless. Also, the special move in Bare Knuckle 3 is useless. And also, the difficulty is not very well balanced. So Streets of Rage 3's difficulty is not very well balanced. It was made too hard. Bare Knuckle 3 is a game that was made too easy. Even on hardest difficulty, it's not a challenging game. So if you're not making a game very challenging, in my opinion, you're not helping the replayability. So this is probably, to me, I would say, middle of the pack kind of. It's definitely not a B tier. Definitely an A tier because of the combat system. It does a lot of things right. But on the other hand, this is like a low A in my opinion. Okay, let's knock down, I guess, the Shredders, the TMNT. This is the last TMNT that I played, or the last TMNT in the list. TMNT Shredder's Revenge. Shredder's Revenge, it's obviously very well known for the fact that it was amazing. It was made like by Tribute, which was their first beat 'em up basically, and they really like nailed everything. It brought back the genre. Like Streets of Rage 4 brought back the genre of beat 'em ups. I think Shredder's Revenge sort of made that genre way more fun for casual players. Streets of Rage 4 is a great game for everyone, but for casuals, at some point you like, there is a limitation for what you can do. If you try to play it on like harder difficulties, or even if you try to challenge yourself on normal difficulty. Shredder's Revenge is a game that is super accessible. The combat system is amazing. The presentation is out of this world. Music is great. Obviously, the issues are technically the difficulty, the boss design, especially on top difficulty, the taunt system, which is technically refilling your special, so you can just taunt, like stand and taunt and then move on. So that brings it down to me. But the biggest problem to me are the boss design, and to me this would have been an S tier if it wasn't for these issues. But it's definitely a strong A. I would put it probably here. Is it better than Hyperstone Heist? No. Like it's right a notch below Hyperstone Heist. Okay, Spider-Man. Spider-Man is a Sega beat 'em up. So 90s. So late 80s, early 90s. We had a lot of like we had the Sega, Capcom, and Konami take those franchise beat 'em up licenses and switch them into franchises, into beat 'em ups. And Sega basically, so Konami was known for TMNT and Simpsons, and Sega took the Spider-Man slash Marvel franchise and built a beat 'em up. This beat 'em up is relatively fun. It combines both platforming and beat 'em up. The presentation is amazing. The gameplay is kind of like too simple, and sometimes it's not amazing. The problem with it mostly is about the health. So you had like what they call gauntlet health, which is a numerical health that goes down with the time. So this game doesn't have a timer, but your health goes down by 1 HP every second, every I think 5 seconds or 10 seconds. So this means that if you're not constantly killing enemies quicker and not basically trying to speedrun the game in a way, you're not gonna get far. And that mechanic honestly gets in the way. But it's a good game. It's definitely an A in my opinion. I like this game a lot because it does a lot of things right. But it has some issues. I would have put it as probably. I would say I would leave it as an A regardless, even if it had fixed those issues. Okay, here let's talk about you know, another like franchise, which is obviously Marvel. So Marvel and the Avengers was an SNES beat 'em up that came out I think '94. It was developed by Capcom, and it took basically fighting game mechanics and put them into a beat 'em up. So you can like play it as a sort of a Street Fighter in a way. As it's a side scroller, it has a lot of cool stuff in it, and I like the fact that it's very accessible and it's a fun game to play, not super hard. So yeah, this is definitely a strong A as well. Yeah, is it better than Spider-Man? Yes. Is it better than Bare Knuckle? Yeah. I'll put this as probably better than these games here, because it's super fun. The only thing is that it has some slowdowns, but overall it's very fun. Which brings us to a similar game that was developed by Capcom a year later, but they took the X-Men franchise. But this is actually a less fun game compared to Marvel. So I'm gonna put X-Men as probably a strong B here. I don't know. It in terms of stage design and bosses, it's not as memorable as the Avengers. And the characters they chose here, they're not as good. No, sorry. This is the X-Men. Oh yeah. Oh no, sorry. Yeah, that was my mistake. So I was thinking of X-Men. So this is the X-Men that I was talking about, which is the fun game. Sorry. War of Gems is the game that I thought. Yeah, they took basically the same gameplay as X-Men, but they sort of just put other characters. In my opinion, that weren't very memorable. And yeah, when we're talking about the Avengers, so this is the arcade game. I should have prepared maybe better script for everything, but anyway, we'll get through this. This is yeah, I just want to basically make sure that I'm not forgetting any games here. But this game, X-Men and the Avengers, or yeah, Marvel and the Avengers. This is a game developed by Data East. So as I said, yeah, Capcom, Konami, Sega, and they took basically Marvel franchises or very well-known franchises, and they made them they made beat 'em ups out of them. And this is a Data East game that came out, I think, in 1990. Very fun game. This is definitely a B. This is definitely not an A game because it's relatively simple. Basically, you play Iron Man, Silver Surfer, all these like characters that are relatively well known, but the mechanics, they're not as developed for a 1990 game. That's why I put it as a B and not as an A. All right, talking about Violent Storm. So Violent Storm is a beat 'em up by Konami that sort of took the Final Fight mechanics a little bit, and they made them like unique a little bit. Violent Storm is an amazing game in my opinion because you know, the presentation. The only thing about Violent Storm is the difficulty of the bosses, because you have to fight them in a very specific way, otherwise you're gonna get wrecked. But other than that, this is an easy A. In my opinion, I prefer it more than Final Fight. In my opinion, it's not an S tier because of the issues with the bosses, the way you play the bosses. But this is definitely a top tier game. Yeah, Captain Gordon. Yeah, Captain Gordon. He knows this game. When are you gonna play Boris, Captain Gordon? We need that Boris clear. We're waiting. We're waiting. That two loop deathless Boris clear. Get in on it. Get in on it. One day. Okay, let's go. All right. This brings us to another game that I'd like. That was developed by SNK, so SNK or Alpha Denshi, called Mutation Nation. So Neo Geo was a very good platform for fighting games, but in terms of beat 'em ups, I think they didn't release very good beat 'em ups during the era of the Neo Geo. Mutation Nation is one of those games that, and that's why I don't have a lot of Neo Geo beat 'em ups in my list, is because they don't appeal to me that much. Mutation Nation was one of those games that are kind of like was unique because the way it plays like it plays a little bit like a traditional beat 'em up with like a combo string, but instead of having special the specials, the way specials work is that you collect letters and then you have those letters to be used as specials. It's like you have, I think, A, B, C, D, and then you collect them and you can use them strategically in some screens. And if you don't have if you don't have those letters, your special depletes health, but it depletes a lot of health that it's not worth actually using if you don't have the letters. But yeah, Mutation Nation is a fun beat 'em up with like very unique stuff. It plays very differently compared to other beat 'em ups, so that's why this one I put it as a B because of how unique it is. Okay, we talked about Taito. Taito being a very prolific arcade beat 'em up developer. They didn't release a lot of beat 'em up, but the ones they released actually that were pretty good. Lightbringer or what is it called? Light Crusader, I think. No, yeah, Lightbringer. Yeah, Lightbringer. So Lightbringer is a fantasy beat 'em up that has an isometric view, but the way the game plays, actually, the way you move, you can only face left or right. It doesn't play like a true isometric game. It plays more like a beat 'em up with a view that is from the top, and it's a very fun game. This is definitely an easy A for me. Maybe within the same I would say same rank as Dungeon and Dragon Tower of Doom. Yeah, it's a sword and sorcery game. Tower of Doom is a way more fleshed out beat 'em up. Light Crusader is a simple one, but it's also fun to play. So yeah, very nice beat 'em up. All right, so night slashers. So this is a horror beat 'em up. I think it's one of the rare horror beat 'em ups. So we talked about Wildfang earlier. We're gonna talk about Splatterhouse, but Night Slashers, it's like a horror themes beat 'em up that came out, I think, 93, 92, maybe something like that. But it was one of the last beat 'em ups that Data East released. Data East, the beat 'em ups they released, they were very unique, but Night Slashers was kind of a beat 'em up that plays like a typical Final Fight beat 'em up, but it has a lot of like great stuff for it. in terms of like presentation, but also the gameplay of it. You have different characters. They all play differently. You have your combo string, and what makes it unique is the special move where you kind of use your super, and the super depletes, I think, 1/3 of your health, but it's actually it's a move that kills the enemies instantly, and also it does a lot of damage to the bosses. So it becomes like a strategic move to use against the bosses, and it's very very fun to play. So this is an A beat 'em up, definitely an A top tier beat 'em up. Not as good as, let's say, Denjin Makai, but it's definitely better than X-Men and Hook, etc. All right, Comic Zone. Yeah, Comic Zone is, I put it as a beat 'em up. Obviously, it's not a true brawler. It's more of a side-scrolling action game with like beat 'em up mechanics. But yeah, this is like a very original concept where you play in a comic. It has some cool stuff on it. This is a like from a fun factor. It's definitely, it's not an A because in terms of brawler mechanics, it doesn't do anything like special. But when it comes to the fun factor and stuff, this is one of the very memorable games. Definitely better than these games. Yeah, definitely better than all of these. So I'll put it as a strong, yeah, maybe a strong A, maybe over here. Yeah, I mean definitely over here. All right, this one. Okay, Ninja Baseball Batman. We spoke about Irem earlier. We said that yeah, it was a relatively good beat 'em up developer, and all the beat 'em ups that I played of Irems honestly were all good. And Ninja Baseball Batman is one that has a crazy presentation, very fun stuff, and also it's very fun to play. Obviously, for me, I played a character that is super busted, so I didn't get to like learn the game the proper way. But looking at like other playthroughs and how it is, like the game also is relatively deep with mechanics. Like you have your combo string, you have your throws, you can use your specials. For me, I only played it with a character where you can only spam one move and win. So it didn't give me, so I didn't explore it in the same way as I explored other beat 'em ups. But in terms of fun factor, in terms of presentation, in terms of gameplay, I mean, this is very hard to argue against. Definitely better than these, but yeah, it's definitely an A tier beat 'em up. All right, POW Prisoner of War. This is an SNK game. When SNK was obviously trying to capitalize on the beat 'em up hype, and technically this is a Double Dragon clone, but worse. Unfortunately, it's horrible in terms of AI. I think Alpha Denshi and SNK back then, they were experimenting, and they didn't do a good job because the game has a lot of issues with AI. It has a lot of issues with the movesets, the hitboxes. If you're not playing this game in a specific way where you're abusing the AI by jumping, it's because in this game when you jump, the AI stops. So it gets confused because they're trying to track you, and they stop tracking you when you're in the air, and so you kind of just abuse this mechanic left and right. So yeah, it's not a fun beat 'em up to play. I've done a deathless on it, but the reason I've done the deathless is because I abused one mechanic. I was patient enough to learn it, but on the other hand, I wasn't. It wasn't a game that I enjoyed, so this is definitely a C. I didn't put it as a D because it's not as bad as the other down below, but it's not as good. Yeah, Street of Rage, of course, of course. I mean, this is a very subjective tier list. This is not meant to be a tier list, you know, where it's like you rate things. I try to be objective in a way, but obviously this is my preference. So a lot of the games that are seen here, people are gonna see Street of Rage 3 and think, hey, what is this guy smoking? Actually, Street of Rage 3 is better than 2, in my opinion. I was debating, is Cadillacs and Dinosaurs better than Street of Rage 2? But they're all like, to me, if you're in S tier, they're like very small differences. All right, moving on to Ninja Warriors. Yeah, Ninja Warriors is a sort of a hack and slash by Taito. This game is kind of like a simple hack and slash on one plane. Yeah, and it came up with a lot of cool stuff. Like for example, you play as a cyborg ninja, and when you get hit, depending if you got hit like the head, or for example the chest, or on the legs, when you take damage, you're in those areas and you get exposed. Uh, Technically, you take double damage. So that was a system that was pretty unique. And in terms of fun factor, this is a very very good game. Like it's a bit tricky because you have to learn, but honestly, there's not a lot of cheese in it. So you have to really to learn the game the proper way to beat it. And yeah, this is a fun beat 'em up. Definitely, in terms of fun factor, this is definitely a strong B. Let's look at Ninja Warriors. Yeah, so Ninja Warriors 1 was an arcade game that came out I think 89, and Ninja Warriors again was developed by Natsume. So the first one is developed by Taito, and Natsume took the license and basically developed sort of a remake of the first game on the SNES. And man, this game is so good in terms of mechanics. For a game that uses basically 3 buttons, it has a lot of deep stuff in it. Really, really cool game. It only goes on one plane, so it's not a side scroll, a belt scrolling beat 'em up. It's similar to like Bad Dudes or like the first Ninja Warriors, but it doesn't actually prevent it from being a deep game from a mechanics perspective, from a boss design perspective. You have 3 characters that play completely different. This game to me is an easy A, probably top tier. I would even put it above Streets of Rage 1 because of how good the mechanics are. Yeah, maybe I'll put it even over Final Fight, because this is not a Final Fight clone. This is its own game, and they came up with like so many different systems. And Ninja Warriors, once again, which was basically a remake of the remake. I would put it maybe not as good as I prefer the Ninja Warriors once again better, but this is like they took the same thing and made it sort of in a they made it better by adding more characters, giving wider screen, adding more movesets. So, but I think they made it worse in a way that the widescreen it's a hindrance rather than an advantage. All right, let's talk about Final Vendetta. So as you saw here, I'm talking about beat 'em ups that came out late, like early, and beat 'em ups that came later. So I played like a variety of beat 'em ups from the 90s to the 2000s to the 2010s to the 2020s. And Final Vendetta is one of those beat 'em ups that came up recently, but the developers have that arcade mentality where they really love arcade games, that they designed a game that plays like an arcade game. And Final Vendetta, although like it's not for everyone, but to me this hit really the arcade itch. I really enjoyed it because it was a game that I got to learn, and the way it plays like a typical arcade beat 'em ups, like a Final Fight or Streets of Rage. But the thing with it is that the presentation, it's really what makes it stand out. Maybe the characters are not as charismatic. The presentation is not as amazing, but the pixel art, the mechanics, the fun factor makes this game, like, to me, one of the best beat 'em ups that came up in the recent era. Alright, I think we spoke about Technos. Technos has been one of the most prolific beat 'em up developers, and yeah, Shadow Force was a beat 'em up that was their last beat 'em ups they developed, actually. Yeah, Shadow Force is is sort of an interesting beat 'em up because it's a beat 'em up with fighting game mechanics. It also has a mechanic where you play as your character, but then you can choose actually to possess the enemy. So it becomes a game of like you possess the enemy and you have the same moveset as your enemy. So it was a very original. It's very fun actually to learn. And it has a lot of things going well for it. The biggest issue are probably how enemies are. If you're not playing with the OP characters, if you're not choosing to use the OP enemies, it becomes very difficult to get into it. So this is a very strong B, I would say. Yeah, this is a very strong B. Maybe not as good as Ninja Warriors in my opinion, but definitely better than the other ones here. Okay, let's talk about Taito beat 'em up called Rastan Saga 3, or Warrior's Blade. So Rastan was kind of like a series of games that was like more action platformers, but they decided to basically make the third. So the first one and the second one were like more action adventure platformers games, and the third game is like a beat 'em up, and it's such a good beat 'em up because it has a lot of like, it's basically like Golden Axe, but the presentation and the stage design and other stuff are like very, very different. But to me, this is like a very, very good beat 'em up. I'd put this as a B, maybe one of the best beat 'em ups. And also, you can play it like in different ways. You can play it. You can fight enemies. You can also choose to go around like different paths. Yeah, it's pretty good. 99 Vida, not easy still? Yeah, fuck 99 Vidas. Sorry, man. The Brazilians, man. The Brazilian messed up on this one. It's nothing against the Brazilian developers, but when I played this game and I saw how they designed the bosses, I decided no, this is not how you should design a beat 'em up with like complete armor and like insane amount of health. Anyway, all right, so let's talk about Battle Axe. So Battle Axe is a hack and slash, sort of very similar to what is the game that mostly close to it? It plays like a Zelda game a little bit, but yeah, it's a hack and slash, top view, and it's pretty good. It's a hack and slash. The biggest issue I think with this game is that it doesn't have any character in it. It's they just took basically D&D types of characters and they put them in there, so there is not a lot of continuity. But it's a fun game for what it is. Anyway, not a lot to say about it, to be honest. Good mechanics and everything, but it's not memorable. This is a big game. Yeah, exactly. That's the one. Yeah. It's 3 hours actually. It took me 3 hours to beat it. Yeah. but to be fair, I played it on top difficulty, so maybe the game on top difficulty was not designed for that kind of game. But in terms of, but they made the top difficulty. So the problem with the if you make a game top difficulty, you should make it, you should balance it, and they didn't balance it at all. They just basically increased the health to everybody, and they made it the way it is. But I think 90 Nights Vidas on normal difficulty is about 1 hour. Yeah. But I think you get into spamming even on normal difficulty because of how the bosses are designed. Alright, continuing with Metamorphic Force. So Metamorphic Force is a Konami beat 'em up. So Konami back then, they had like one type of game that they used to put in, which is like a typical TMNT Simpsons style with 2 buttons and then same gameplay. So Metamorphic Force was like after the 90s, like in 1992, they started to make their beat 'em ups feel and play a little bit more differently. And Metamorphic Force is a great beat 'em up in terms of mechanics, because the way it plays like a typical Konami beat 'em ups, but they had little twists to the formula where You sort of play as a beast, and like the presentation, they made the presentation so good with a lot of like cool mechanics, and the bosses are relatively memorable. So just for the presentation and itself, I'll give it definitely A. Gameplay is relatively simple, and I think they kept it simple for a reason, which is very good. So anyway, it's a pretty good beat 'em up in my opinion, that worth exploring. Yeah, I'm trying to go faster because I've been doing this for 2 hours, and I want to get into that, like do it in less than 2 hours and a half, probably, that so that at least I have something, you know, decent. I don't want this to be like a 5-hour YouTube video. I might cut into 2 parts, maybe part 1 and part 2, to make it like a little bit better, because I feel like me talking for 2 hours over the last because I didn't prepare any script, anything. I just basically went freestyle. So that could be a little bit too much for people. Anyway, next is Pulirula. Pulirula is a Taito beat 'em up. Yeah, a beat 'em up here that is kind of like a unique beat 'em up. It doesn't play like a Final Fight game. It plays close to, I would say, King of Dragons. You have one move. You have a magic move, and you have a jump. So I think Pulirula is an okay beat 'em up in terms of beat 'em up mechanics, but what makes it, I think, fun is the presentation. So to me, this is a B just because of the presentation. Yeah, I'd say middle of the tier, middle of the pack kind of B tier game. Okay, moving on to Tough Turf. Tough Turf is a Double Dragon beat 'em up, a Double Dragon clone. Came out in '89. It basically took Double Dragon formula and just tried to make a Double Dragon game because they wanted to capitalize on the hype. It's a good game in the sense that once you learn what the OP move is, it becomes very playable. But when it comes to, I think if you look at it as a game that is fun to play, I like the game personally, but it's hard for me to give it a B. Lower than a, like, it's hard for me to give it something higher than a C because the way you play it, you just basically use a weapon, a pipe, and then abuse it. But if you try to play it as a Double Dragon game, yeah, it's not gonna be fun. So it's very similar to Double Dragon, but it's not as good as Double Dragon 1. So this is probably the best C game. Okay, we have another title beat 'em up, Arabian Nights. So Arabian Nights, I think it's kind of yeah, it's similar to like Knights of the, yeah, it's similar to King of Dragons in a way that you don't have a combo string. You just like beat enemies and you have different characters. But the themes and the Sword of Sorcery, it's a mix of of Knights of the Round and Golden Axe a little bit. Yeah, very fun beat 'em up. This is definitely a beat in my opinion because it has great mechanics, great stage design. The bosses are a bit unfair, but once you know how to learn them, like obviously you need to play a little bit with the game. If you want to play with the game's rules, you're gonna get destroyed, but I think it's playable despite the fact that you have to play it a certain way. Alright, moving on to Blade Master. So Blade Master is an iron beat 'em up. Came out in '91, I think. It plays very similar to Golden Axe as well. A hack and slash, no combo string. The thing is, like, I think you have one move that is jump, attack, and down. So that makes it like it doesn't cost health. So it has like some uniqueness in it. It's a fun beat 'em up. The biggest problem with this one is the final boss, which if you don't fight her a certain way, you're gonna get destroyed. But to me, this is definitely a B. Yeah, strong B. Kenjo, yeah. This one is I put it here as a beat 'em up, but it's actually a hack and slash. Yeah, nothing special about this game, to be honest. This is more like a... If I have to like give a analogy to a game, yeah, it's relatively similar to... It's similar to Ninja Warriors in a way. Because it goes on one plane and then you slash. But the biggest move in this game is basically you charge your attack so that you gain range and then you shoot. Yeah, so there's nothing to say about it. It's a C. Yeah, it's probably like a weak... yeah, it's an okay game, nothing memorable. Knuckle Bash. So Knuckle Bash is a funny beat 'em up. It was developed first as a fighting game, but then they decided to sort of switch it to a beat 'em up. You play like it's like an unhinged beat 'em up. You don't really play it as a beat 'em up, to be honest. You try to play it as a sort of a fighting game and spam like a couple of moves. But yeah, this is a fun game. I mean, it's only memorable because of the presentation. But other than that, it's an okay B. I'll give it a B just because of how funny it is. But this is a weak B. Okay, Splatterhouse. So Splatterhouse is definitely like one of those pioneered beat 'em ups that came up with a different horror. Like there was no horror beat 'em up or brawler back then, and this one came up with a very cool system where you sort of like fighting monsters and beating up guys with the weapons. Very, very fun game. This is an easy A in my opinion. Yeah, definitely an easy A. Maybe not the best game of the A's, but it's a good one. Splatterhouse 2 is more of the same. It's more of the same, but like it's just a copy of the first game, so it doesn't do anything different. And that's why I'm gonna put it as a B, because it didn't add anything new. It just basically copied the same of the first game. But in terms of fun factor, this is a very, very good game. Splatterhouse 3 is kind of like a true beat 'em up, but it's so jank. It has a lot of issues with how you fight enemies. Like some enemies you cannot even fight them because they have so much advantage. And if you're not fighting them with the OP move, you're not gonna win. So this is definitely a C in my opinion. Yeah, a relatively disappointing game. Yeah, I mean, I enjoyed it when I played it, but when I look at it from an objective view, because I didn't play it as a kid, I don't have any nostalgia towards it. This is definitely not a great beat 'em up. Earlier we spoke about Wildfang, which is like a horror themed beat 'em up, but Ninja Gaiden is sort of like in the same vein of Wildfang. A horror themed beat 'em up with like cool mechanics. And yeah, I think this is the same as Wildfang. It's definitely a B in my opinion. If I have to put it, yeah, if I have to put it like within, I'll put it as the same. It's not as good as Wildfang. I think Ninja Gaiden is it's jankier actually than Wildfang, but it has enough things for it to warrant a very fun playthrough. Alright, Die Hard Arcade. So Die Hard Arcade is a 3D beat 'em up. It's a 3D beat 'em up, but it plays like a 2D beat 'em up in the sense that you can only face left and right. This game mechanically has a lot of moves. It's an amazing game. Maybe you don't need all the moves, but in terms of I think what makes it, I would have given it a B, even an A, but the difficulty is insane and it's unfair, and that's why I'm putting it as a C, because the difficulty balance is so like it's so bad, and also the randomness of the enemy's behavior. It's probably better than Alter Beast, but not as good as, like, let's say the other C games. Dynamite Cop 2, Dynamite Cop or Dynamite Deca or so yeah, Die Hard Arcade or Dynamite Deca was the first game. Dynamite Cop was the second game. Dynamite Deca 2. It wasn't released. It was released at Dynamite Cop and Dynamite Deca in Japan, but they didn't have the license of Die Hard, so they called it Dynamite Cop. And this is a much better beat 'em up because you know, this is a true 3D beat 'em up. It's very fast paced, very well designed. It has some issues in terms of like difficulty, but honestly, and much more balanced than the first game. So this is definitely an easy B. And which brings us to the other Dynamite Deca game, which is a reskin of Dynamite Cop with like some tweaks. So I'm gonna put this as the same. So Agent Dynamite, Dynamite Cop, they're pretty much the same game in a way. Pretty good. 64th Street, yeah, 64th Street is a beat 'em up that is developed by Jalico. Jalico was not very well known for beat 'em ups. I think they haven't developed a lot of beat 'em ups. They were mostly known for Russian Beat series, which came out I think a couple of years after 64th Street. But 64th Street is an arcade beat 'em up that is kind of tried to capitalize on the hype of Final Fight, so they made their own beat 'em up. They added some twists where you can throw the enemy to the background. You play as cops that beat the detectives actually that beat the shit out of people. So the premise, the presentation is very fun, but the gameplay, I would say definitely not great. I mean, it's fun for what it is, but once you start to applying the gameplay and try to fight the enemies with the mechanics that the game gave you, not great. So this is a C. Maybe better than Karate Blaze, but not an amazing game. Battle Circuits. So Battle Circuits, it was the last Capcom beat 'em up. Came out in '97. From what I heard, I think it was developed as a different game. It wasn't supposed to be a beat 'em up. I think it was supposed to be a racing game, but they decided to switch it up to a beat 'em up in the last minute. This game is great. I mean, this is top tier game. Not my favorite in terms of S. I wouldn't put it as an S tier because it's not a game that I would replay all the time. But in terms of gameplay, in terms of mechanics, I mean, this is definitely better than all the other Capcom beat 'em ups that they made. In my opinion, this is the best beat 'em up after maybe Final Fight and Dungeons of Dragons, just because of how much the variety of the characters. Yeah, so it's pretty good. Yeah, I like it. Yeah, how we rank? Let's go, Swedish Pancake. Yeah, it's a very subjective rating, so I'm trying to go with how I feel. But technically, the criteria I'm putting is the presentation good? Is the pacing good? Is the gameplay or the combat system good? What else? Yeah, the pacing, the variety, fun factor, replayability. Anyway, I'm not using the scale, but like when I'm talking about it, I'm using like different those kind of like things in mind. But this is a very subjective list. Like all tier lists are subjective. So obviously this is not. This is my view of the list, not everybody's view. Okay, Kabuki Z. Kabuki Z goes into the trash. This is the trashy beat 'em up. It's fun for what it is, but it's definitely not a great beat 'em up. Maybe not the worst beat 'em up out there, but this is a janky one. Yeah, this goes into the trash. There's nothing to say about it. So the game was trying to basically take the Japanese hack and slash formula and make it as a beat 'em up, but it fails in everything, man. It fails in everything. I own a few on that list on arcade. Yeah. See this pancake, you have a lot of PCBs, huh? The PCB master. Okay, Ninja Kids. So Ninja Kids is a beat 'em up released by Taito. It's not a true Final Fight clone. It's more like a TMNT clone. Even the characters actually resemble TMNT, and it's a pretty good beat 'em up. It's a fun beat 'em up with some issues. Like in terms of difficulty, there are some bosses that are super unfair. But the way it plays, like you have your jump button, you have your attack button, you have your special button. So it plays like it's a Golden Axe a little bit. But the way I think it's designed and the fun factor, pretty good. So I'll put it as a B. But also the Streets of Rage series on Mega Drive, yeah. Yeah, you have all Genesis ones, right? Yeah, I mean, Streets of Rage to me, they're like either S tier or A tier. That's it. Okay, Cross Swords. Let's look at Cross Swords. So Cross Swords is, I put it as a brawler. Obviously, it's a different, it's sort of a Punch-Out clone. But it has like more combat depth into it. Cross Sword is an amazing game. It's the Cross Swords 1 and 2. In terms of mechanics, it's like the way you fight enemies is that you have like waves of enemies coming at you and you fight them one by one. The way to win in this game is just dodge. They give you a block button, but it's useless, so you just try to bait enemies to whiff their hits and then punish them. Great presentation, honestly. Difficulty is quite high difficulty. It's one of the, say, like if you like hard beat 'em ups or hard brawlers, whatever, this one definitely I highly recommend it. But to me, it's just a B, maybe the top, the best B in that list because it's a pretty good game. Yeah, it's a Neo Geo game. Yeah, Neo Geo game came out in '91, and also it came out on Neo Geo CD, I think. And then the sequel, Cross Swords 2, came out on the Neo Geo CD. But originally they were looking to, release it on the Neo Geo a year after the second one. Yeah, so they were looking to do that, and then technically it was they ended up releasing it on the Neo Geo CD, but they decided not to release it on the Neo Geo, the original Neo Geo, because there was a lot of hype on the fighting games that they thought they're not gonna make not gonna be a successful game, so they canceled it. But it came back 2 years later. Yeah, Neo Geo CD. This is actually a better game mechanically compared to Cross Swords. You have more freedom, you have better moveset, and you also, I think, have more character variety. You have 3 different characters that play completely different. So to me, I really enjoyed this game a lot. This is definitely a B game. I would say it's definitely in my top 3. Yeah, in my top 3. If I have to put it like here, it's definitely one of my favorite games. Okay, which brings us to not sure what this game is. What is this game? Oh, is this King of Dragons? No. Can't make it any. Yeah, this game I'm not sure. Anyway, moving on to the other game. Magic Sword. Oh, this is, yeah, Magic Sword. All right, yeah, you're right. Thanks. You remember you remember it. So yeah, Magic Sword is an amazing game. Honestly, this is A, just because of how fun it is. It's a hack and slash, one plane. It has a lot of like good stuff going for it. It's basically it's a spiritual sequel to Tiger to Black Tiger. It's a spiritual sequel, but with beat 'em up mechanics or hack and slash mechanics. You have like your helpers. It has great presentation. This is an easy A to me anyway. Definitely easy A. Maybe middle of the pack A. Yeah, Aliens vs Predator in there. I'm thinking of getting that one. Oh yeah, nice. I think it's a popular one. I think it's an expensive one. Yeah, like Alien vs Predator, it's an expensive cartridge. Like you're gonna have to pay. You're gonna have to pay for that. All right, bringing us to moving on to Gaiopolis. So Gaiopolis is a top-down beat 'em up, fantasy kind of like it's a response to D&D by Konami. This is an amazing game, very good presentation wise. I would have put it as an S if the combat was like without any flaws, but the combat unfortunately has a lot of flaws. So yeah, this is This is probably my favorite A game because of how it's an amazing. It has a great presentation, very good mechanics. Like, it's a very memorable game. I don't know. It's like the way it makes you feel. It's an amazing game. Okay, Kurin Kungten. This is a sort of a Spartan X clone, but worse. So, well, I'm not gonna talk a lot about it, but this is a C tier. This is a worse version of Spartan X. The biggest gimmick is that you charge your moveset and then you sort of try to beat enemies as fast as possible. But it has a lot of issues with the final boss. The final boss is a pain in the ass. It's random. You just rely on luck to beat it, and unfortunately that's why I rank it as a C. I would have put it as a D, but it has enough things for it going for it to be a C and not a D. You can see stuff in Magic Sword that is from Puck. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But basically, Magic Sword expanded the score system. It made the sword and sorcery theme much more appealing. But yeah, there's a lot of similarities. Okay, talk about Kadash. So Kadash is sort of like an action platformer, but with the beat 'em up mechanics or hack and slash mechanics. This is a great adventure. It's not the best game out there in terms of like it's a great game, but maybe it has some issues with probably how you have to grind the system. Yeah, I'm not gonna penalize it because of that, because that's how the way it was designed. It's a great system, but I would say, although I wouldn't put it as a B, yeah, it's definitely a strong B, but it's unique enough to be put in a C, in a B tier, in an A tier. Okay, this is Ride and Fight. So Ride and Fight is a very fun beat 'em up, very unique, that has basically very cool mechanics, where because I think it's one of the most unique ones where you have a view of like behind you. It's a super scalar beat 'em up basically. It's similar to so the way it looks, it's very similar to, what's the name of those games? Space Harrier, Night Striker. So they're using super scalar, but instead of developing a shooter, they developed a beat 'em up. And honestly, the results is pretty good. The biggest issue, I would say, it's mostly the difficulty. But when it comes to gameplay, it comes with fun factor, this is an easy B. I would have put it as an A if it wasn't for how complicated the game becomes after stage 2. But yeah, this is a strong B. I would even put it like here. Okay, Panzer Bandit. So Panzer Bandit is a game that is basically a clone of Guardian Heroes. So this is a PlayStation game. So basically they took the Guardian Heroes, not the formula itself, but sort of the visuals and the playing system, and they made a beat 'em up. This is a very solid beat 'em up. Yeah, I would definitely put it as, yeah, definitely a strong B. This is not an A because it gets very repetitive and it's a bit on the longer side. The pacing becomes a bit too much. But in terms of mechanics and in terms of presentation, amazing. All right, Sword of Sodan. So Sword of Sodan is a hack and slash game. Very similar to, I would say, Spartan X. So it's a very unique game, but if you want to put it in that category of like side scrollers with hack and slash mechanics, yeah, it's within that area. It's a sword and sorcery. Very, very fun game. It's a very hard game, but once you get to learn it, it's a very fun. This is definitely a B. A low B, I would say. Alright, Zombies Revenge. Okay, we have the last three. So Zombies Revenge is a 3D beat 'em up. Like Sega was releasing a lot of 3D beat 'em ups back then, like in the era when they were releasing Dynamite Cop. Yeah, Zombies Revenge. They released also like the other beat 'em ups that were sort of moved on from 3D style, and they were releasing it. And this is a fun beat 'em up. It uses basically shooting mechanics and beat 'em up mechanics. The biggest problem with it is that it's a hard game. It's a bit jankier with the movement, but it's a fun fact. So for the fun factor, I put it as a B. Middle of the pack B. Maybe like here. Yeah, definitely here. Yeah, it's a fun game. Sword of Wisdom was a bit of a big deal when it was released. Yeah, exactly. Because of the big sprites, yeah. Absolutely. Alright, last two. The jankiest. Fallen City Brawl. For Fallen City Brawl, I was very excited about that game because after Final Vendetta, I thought, oh, there's another developer that is coming with a game that is like arcade style with cool stuff. But I was very disappointed with how it came up. Super jank beat 'em up. The guy made the game based on a scoring system, but forgot everything about beat 'em up mechanics and beat 'em up basics. And so it's very rough around the edges. The biggest mechanic is basically try to get the score. Try to get basically as much. Try to get your power or your special meter to the max, and then basically spam the special, and then get the ninjas and spam score. And yeah, he kept patching the game, making the game harder, because it used to be one of the easiest ones in the sense like you can juggle the bosses indefinitely. He got rid of that, which is fair, I understand. But he also didn't fix the bad hit detection. He didn't fix the bad AI. He didn't fix the balancing around the health. So I have a lot of problems with it, and that's why I'm putting it as a D. I'd say I would have put it. It would have become maybe like a great game, maybe a B, maybe a solid A, if it wasn't for those issues. So unfortunately. And then the last one, the last game, Hatu. This is a janky beat 'em up that kind of like has a lot of cool stuff in it. It plays like a Double Dragon a little bit, but with some twists. It's a cool game. It's a cool game. It has like some mechanics where you throw enemies. You have to get used to the hitboxes and abuse one of the moves hitboxes so that you can kill enemies faster. It's a fun game. It's a joke. It's a little bit of a joke. So mechanically, it's a shit game. It's definitely a D. It's maybe not the worst D. The worst D is definitely Gang Wars. Is it better? Is it worse than Kabuki Z? No, Kabuki Z is better. Is it better than 99 Vidas? 100%. So this is basically this is where we are with the tier list. So very, very good. Not a lot of games that made it to the S tier. I would have thought maybe I'll be a little bit more generous with the S tier, but I think I'm keeping the S tier really to the games that usually you're gonna see me play a lot. Those three I play a lot. Those two I don't play as much, but I still like to go back to from time to time. And then yeah, after 2 hours and 37 minutes, we made it to the list. 100 Brawlers. So all these games I've done with 1 credit. Most of them I've done without losing a life. So I'm very happy with my achievements, but also being able to rate them. So as you see, there is a lot of A's and B's. Obviously, if it wasn't for the 1cc, yeah, if it wasn't for the 1cc, obviously I would have probably ranked this lower. But that's because I 1cc'd all these games. So some of them, because I learned them, because the way I sort of understood the mechanics, helped with the rating. But for the ones that are like trash tier, even me like knowing the mechanics and learning them, like for you to be in the D tier, you really have to be a shitty game. At least if you're in the B tier and E tier, even if sometimes some people might not agree with some of the things, like having for example Ninja Kids as a B tier, debatable. Zombie Revenge as a B tier, debatable. But those games I learned how to 1cc, so I understood what the developers had in mind. So that's why I'm giving them a higher score. A tier is the same. So yeah, that's why basically I like yeah, and I'm happy with this list. So we have 5 games in the top list and 6 games in the tier list. So this is basically the creme de la creme. And then these are like, these are interchangeable sometimes. Sometimes, depending on the day, you can be in A tier and a B tier. Yeah. Yeah, this is the Dungeons of Dragons Tower, Shadow over Mystara. Yeah, this is basically, yeah, D&D Shadow over Mystara, yeah. Yeah, the last two, so yeah, you have Street of Rage 3. Yeah, Street of Rage 2, Cadillacs and Dinosaurs, Siege 4, and Shadow over Mystara. Yeah, those are the good, yeah. No, it's a very good game, yeah. I mean, the reason why I put it as S tier is because it has great beat 'em up mechanics. It's a great adventure, a lot of secrets. Replayability is amazing. You could play like different routes. I'm ranking it based on multiple factors, as opposed to, for example, Street of Rage. Obviously, I'm biased, but I'm ranking it based on the presentation and the combat. But if I look at other things, yeah, like Shadow over Mystara has, like, objectively, Shadow over Mystara has way more things going for it than Street of Rage 3. Same with Cadillacs and Dinosaurs. Obviously, it's better than Cadillacs and Dinosaurs, but I think, yeah, this is definitely a game that stands the test of time. But yeah, that's tier list. Yeah, thank you guys for waiting and for bearing with me. It was an improvised tier list. I didn't have like a script or anything to really speak about it in a more elegant way, or more tight. Like a lot of the times I just rambled. But it was just basically me thinking about the game, talking about them in like the most concise way. But yeah, I'm glad I made this list, because I think I'm satisfied with this list, to be honest. Maybe some of the A's and B's I've been a little bit maybe too generous, or not as generous, but hey, it is what it is. But yeah, thank you for watching, guys. Yeah, thank you, Prox. Yeah, Swedish Pancake. Hey, welcome, Zeraxis. Yeah, thank you for bearing with me for speaking for 2 hours and 45 minutes or 41 minutes.